Hi, boys and girls. I wanted to go over really quickly our writing rubric. This week we're going to be working on revising, editing, and publishing our personal narrative draft. And having our rubric helps us to kind of think about what we need to do in order to make our writing better. So I want to walk you through this rubric. And as I'm walking through this rubric, I want you to think about your own writing and think about if you have not yet done that, if you're starting to, or if yes, you have mastered that and you are rocking and rolling, okay? So my first box says I created a plan to help me map out my personal narrative and I followed it. All right, so your plan would be your 5 events. Knowing that there are at least 5 things that happened in your story, that would tell me that there should be at least 5 sentences in your personal narrative draft. I have read I've read all of your drafts actually, and there were several people who wrote 1 sentence. Some people wrote 2 sentences. So as you're planning your draft or you're writing your draft, you're following this. And each of these events is at least 1 sentence. The heart, where like we snuck the container outside and he dared me, that's the heart of my story. I'm going to have probably 3 or 4 sentences about that. Okay? So I'm following this as I'm writing. So for me, yes, I did that. If you didn't follow your plan, then you might put not yet or maybe that you're starting to. Okay? Now, I wrote the important part of an event bit by bit and took out unimportant parts. So if I go into my draft, I am talking specifically about the gumball challenge, about Thomas challenging me. I didn't describe us going to Sam's, right? Because that grocery store trip has nothing to do with the actual challenge. I just needed you to know why we had the huge container of crybabies, right? So if you have not focused in on what your story is mostly about, you're going to want to make some changes to your writing. I wrote a beginning in which I showed what was happening and where, getting the reader into the world of the story. I had to go back in and add some of those details because at first I had just had one day my mom bought a huge container of crybabies, and that doesn't really help set the scene. So I put one hot summer morning. So that lets me know it was in the morning. And then I said we went to Sam's. So that's one of my settings, right? However, the main setting, because again, my focus is on that gumball challenge. The main setting was that we snuck the gumballs outside into my backyard. And I described what my backyard looked like. We built a fort. We loved to hang out there because it was cool and shady. So that really sets the scene for you. So if you have not done that, and you're right here with not yet, then I want you to go into your writing and add those details to really set the scene. I wrote an ending that connected to the beginning or the middle of the story. So think about your ending. I'm going to go look at my ending. I will be honest, I struggle with writing conclusions or the endings. So when I had finally completed the dare, my tongue was so raw and my stomach hurt. I felt so sick, but it was worth it because I won the dare. Now Thomas had to do the same thing. Does that kind of connect back to the middle of my story where he challenged me? I think it does. So now you know that there's going to be maybe another story to come based on what my conclusion is. All right, so let that conclusion kind of be a guide to tie back to what happened in the middle of your story. I used action, dialogue. Oops, sorry, I went too far. I used action, dialogue, or feelings to help my reader visualize events. Action and feelings are really what we were focusing on. I talked a little bit about feeling pretty nervous. Maybe I should add what made me feel nervous or how I was personally feeling. I think that might be a good idea. I'm going to change colors so you can kind of see where I'm adding that because I want you to really know how I was feeling. So I wasn't sure it was a good idea and I felt pretty nervous. Let me change that color again. Sorry. make it blue. My stomach was in knots. That means my stomach was feeling kind of tight, and my hands shook with fear. So you could tell like I was shaking because I was so nervous about doing that. But Thomas was my friend, so I listened to him. So even though I was feeling those feelings, I still listened to him and decided to go along with what he was doing. All right? So I went in and I added to show my feelings. Not just I'm nervous, but how do we know that I'm nervous? All right? And if I wanted to, I could even cut this part out. I could even say I wasn't sure it was a good idea. And I could take this out. How do I do that? I know that I can strike through. I might take that out and just say I wasn't sure it was a good idea. My stomach was in knots and my hands shook with fear. And that lets you as the reader know that I'm nervous and I'm not even telling you, right? Totally up to you as a writer if you want to do something like that. You can leave the feeling word or you can take it out. That's totally your choice. I showed why characters did what they did, including their thinking. If you remember, we made a plan where we were analyzing the character. And in analyzing the character, we gave some of what the characters were thinking, what the people were thinking or doing. So down here, Thomas was laughing the whole time. Laughing and giggling were things that Thomas did all the time. He was thinking, let me change that color again. He was thinking, or I can even put it in thoughts. Ha, there's no way she's going to be able to eat that much sour gum. Thomas thought. So even though I don't fully know what Thomas was thinking at the time, I can make some inferences and I can think like, you know what? I bet he was thinking there's no way I could do that, but I'm going to trick him. I sure can. So I included, at first I didn't have that. I didn't have what the character was thinking. But now I've got an example of it, right? And I might put that I'm starting to. I didn't include a whole bunch of examples of what the character was thinking, but I did include a little bit. I challenge you to do the same. I included precise and sometimes sensory details to bring my story to life. If you'll recall, we did the sensory language graph or table, This is a really good tool for you to then add some details into your writing. I know most of you did this sensory language table, and so now your job is to take those details and add them into your writing. All right, I added where I talked about the color, the gumball packages littering the ground. The gumballs were so sour they made me pucker like I was eating a lemon. All of that sensory language really adds to my writing. I used a storytelling voice. That means you're not just saying one day I went with my mom to the store and bought a video game. The end. That's not a storytelling. That's not a story. You're telling me just a sentence. A story is giving lots of details, description, thoughts, really bringing the story to life. I used what I knew about word families and spelling rules to help me spell and edit. What's really cool about using our Word document is that it helps us a lot with our spelling. If we have a lot of misspelled words, it'll underline and it'll help us fix things. All right. And then last but not least, when writing, I used punctuation at the end of every sentence. We've been working on writing complete sentences. So even though we're not writing with pen and pencil right now, we're writing in a Word document, you still need to use a period when you finish a sentence. Go through and read and think when you've made a complete thought, put a period, and start a new sentence. Okay? So my challenge for you today is to go into your draft and have it open side by side with your rubric and start thinking about whether or not you are not yet at this place, you're starting to get there, or yes, you have done that and it is a strong narrative. If you're either in the not yet or starting to categories, that tells me, and you as a writer, that you need to go in and revise. Add more details, add more sensory language, add more heart to your story. Okay? If you need help, I am here to support you. Your job right now, though, is to go look at your rubric and your personal narrative and make sure that you are making it the very best writing that you can. All right? Go off and write, my authors.